Portions of this program are brought to you commercial-free by Mace Security International.
Domestic violence, it's in the national spotlight, and it's an issue here at home. It's a problem in our communities, in our families, with our neighbors. But News Channel 5 is on your side, giving you a voice, addressing your domestic violence concerns right now. The issue of domestic violence was forced into the national spotlight last week when video of Ray Rice hitting his then fiancee, now wife, Janae Rice, in an elevator dominated newscasts and talk shows around the country and went viral on the internet, sparking criticism of the couple. It also had victims of domestic violence coming to Janae Rice's defense, telling their own stories and explaining why they stayed in an abusive relationship. Closer to home, we're just 3 days into this week, and we have reports of the deaths of 2 women allegedly by their partners. And in Lorain, police arrested and charged Wayne Collins with kidnapping, domestic violence, and violating a protection order after keeping his ex-girlfriend locked in her bedroom for 2 months. And it was only about a month ago that Cuyahoga County Judge Lance Mason was indicted on charges after allegedly abusing his wife in public. Good evening, I'm Danita Harris, and thank you for joining us for News Channel 5's Domestic Violence Town Hall Special. We're here in the studio tonight, and with me are several experts to address the issue of domestic violence and explain how to safely leave an abusive relationship. We're also going to talk about prevention through education, and we will provide you a list of agencies with resources for victims. And I want to invite all of you who are watching right now. We want you to join in the conversation. You can email us your questions and comments to my colleague, Michael Baldwin, at webstaff@newsnet5.com. That's webstaff@newsnet5.com. We will read them on the air tonight as you engage with us throughout the hour. Our panelists tonight are Linda Johannick. Linda is CEO of the Domestic Violence and Child Advocacy Center here in Cleveland. It is the only center in Cuyahoga County devoted solely to the issue of domestic violence and child abuse, serving 37,000 men, women, and children. Annually, it's also a national model for the integration of children's programs and domestic violence programming, which empowers adult victims. We have Ruth Johnson Williams. She is a survivor of domestic violence. She is also the founder and CEO of Numa Life Foundation for the prevention of abusive family environments. Her agency educates the religious community on the existence and effects of abuse while emphasizing hope, health, and restoration. Dr. Penny Smith is a survivor of domestic violence. She is currently Executive Director of Academic Services of Northeast Ohio Medical University and the author of the Second Woman Bible Study, which offers guidance to women who have endured traumatic experiences. She also offers a 10-week program to facilitate healing from domestic violence, sexual violence, or post-abortion grief. Her company, Allegra Technologies, provides educational software that assists victims of sexual or domestic violence. And we also have 2 survivors with us tonight. Kiana Rivers, she has been a domestic violence survivor for a little over a year. She was engaged to be married this past May to a man she's known for more than 15 years. But she called off the wedding because he beat her, tried to strangle her, and threatened to kill her. Next to her is Mr. Mike Herron. He is a survivor of domestic violence, and he wants to share his story tonight because men suffering from domestic abuse usually remain silent. And I think you see that Mike is not silent. Joining us via satellite from Charlotte, North Carolina is Beverly Gooden, and she is the author of Confessions of a Church Girl and the creator of the hashtag Why I Stayed. A former victim of domestic violence, she created Why I Stayed in response to criticism of Janae Rice and to share her own story of why she remained in an abusive relationship. So let's start this conversation around the definition, first and foremost, of domestic violence. And I'm going to give that to Linda Johannick. Define to us what it is.
Domestic violence is a pattern of coercive behavior that includes several things. So it's physical violence, it's financial, sexual, emotional, verbal, and psychological. And it usually, when we say domestic violence, it's within an intimate partner relationship.
Now, Ruth, you were in a domestic violence relationship. Can you paint the picture for the person who is watching? What does an abusive relationship look like?
Well, it's hard to tell what abusive relationship looks like from the outside because we all look the same. It's different when you see that there are signs of abuse such as scars or marks. It's different when a person is experiencing abuse such as yelling, verbal, abusive, or financial. So it's hard to really know what an abusive victim looked like.
Now, in your situation, you were married, and tell me some of the types of things that you had experienced.
A lot of what I experienced being a Christian, we still experience things such as yelling. In the faith-based community, many times you won't see a lot of the physical, but there was physical, there was verbal, there was mental, there was social, there was also financial abuse that took place at that time.
Kiana, you said that you are 1 year after you're surviving your relationship that you were in. Tell us a little bit about what was happening in your life.
I was with him for 15 years. I met him when I was 15. So before I became an adult, he already manipulated me and molded me into what he wanted me to be. That led to emotional and verbal psychological abuse for the whole 15 years of our relationship, which led to 4 different physical abuses. One was getting hit with a car, him kicking me down the stairs, throwing me up against the table and the stair landing, and also strangulation.
Now, Dr. Smith, would you say that these are signs that come gradually in a relationship, or do people experience it right from the beginning?
Well, typically, a woman has been hit before she's been hit. And what I mean by that is that it doesn't typically start with the physical abuse. It typically escalates. And there's actually a body of research now that's really categorizing domestic violence into multiple categories, because most people think it's just across the board the same type of incidences. But there's now something known as intimate terrorism, where there's more persistent control and high levels of physical abuse. And then there's situational couple violence, where there's situations where there may be arguments that arise in certain contexts and situations that lead to physical abuse. And help-seeking behaviors are actually different depending on which type of situation a victim may find themselves in.
I want to go to Dr. Lisa Dwayne. She is with us today, and she's from Cleveland State University. She's assistant professor of psychology there. And in your private practice, you talk about post-traumatic stress disorder with the victim. Talk to us a little bit about some of the psychological effects of this mental abuse, this emotional abuse, because it's not just always physical, but we tend to emphasize the physical.
Right. That's right. So we know that post-traumatic stress disorder is the most common major psychological consequence of experiencing this whole range of abusive experiences that your panel is talking about today. And PTSD is an anxiety disorder. We think of it as a disorder related to fear. And so you can imagine if a woman experiences these things in such a chronic way, like we're talking about today, that that sort of fear becomes really salient. Women might have social effects related to the PTSD because they may have started avoiding friends because they feel embarrassed or shame related to the abuse. They may have been isolated by their partner. That's something that commonly happens for victims of domestic violence. So that relates to then this sort of construct of PTSD that women experience.
We've talked a lot about the psyche of the victim, but we also want to deal into the subject tonight of what is going on in the abuser's mind. And we have Mr. Joey Ruffin, who is here. Kind of an interesting person you are, Mr. Ruffin, because you have been abused, but you also have been the abuser. So I'm going to talk to you first on the side of, let's talk about the person who abuses women or abuses a man. What was your background? What was it inside of you that you started behaving in this way?
I believe it was as a teenager. I was bullied a lot from elementary going up through junior high, and I remember trying to escape when I initially escaped into alcohol. And then when I started getting into relationships, I started picking relationships based upon the friends that I had. And it was usually like women who are really controlling or had abusive type behavior. So I started seeking people who I was actually gravitated towards, because the guys who bullied me, I tried to drink with them to fit in. So I was used to being drawn to people who were actually against me. and that's how that went.
Very interesting. We have Beverly Gooden here via satellite. We want to bring you into this conversation because you also experienced abuse. Can you give us a little bit about the type of abuse that your abuser, you were in that relationship for quite some time. What were you experiencing during that time? What type of violence? Was it all physical or was it mental and emotional as well?
It was mostly physical. My ex-husband would choke me, slap me, push me around, bite me. He tried to push me out of a car one time while it was moving. So it was mainly physical, and that was gradual. It started off with a really beautiful relationship. He was the love of my life. For 11 months, he was, the perfect gentleman. And then one day, he acted out in this way. And so initially, I thought it was just a one-time thing because he had been such a different person before. This just had to be a lapse in judgment until it became a regular thing. So that was physical.
And Linda, the women that come to the Domestic Violence and Child Advocacy Center, what are you hearing when they're at that point that they come to your center? Is it at a point where the victim can't take it anymore? Do they come to you and they still go back to the relationship? How does that process begin?
We work with victims really at every stage. So there are some who are thinking about leaving, some who are in a relationship, they're not necessarily ready to leave, but they're confused about what's going on. And then, of course, we have a confidentially located shelter, so for those who've made the decision to leave, they'll come to us. And pretty much, most people don't realize how difficult it is for a victim to leave. There are a lot of people who say, if that happened to me, I'd leave after the first slap. Well, that's just not true for a lot of people. And a lot of the victims we work with say that they once said that. But once you're caught in this web, it's really difficult because the #1 reason women stay is fear. Because they're threatened. If you leave, I will kill you. I will kill your kids. I will stalk you. And sometimes, that's what happens too, the stalking. But there's also financial challenges. How am I going to make it on my own? Or if you have children. And really, when you're working every day to survive, it's really difficult to try to make that plan. But that's why we ask victims as much as possible to make that plan with us. There can be a safe way to exit a relationship.
And we're going to talk about that later in the show, giving that information on how you can create a safe plan. If you are watching right now, you find yourself in this situation, we don't want to wait till the end of the show to give you this information. You can call the National Domestic Violence Hotline. It is 1-800-799-SAFE. Again, 1-800-799-SAFE. You can also call the Domestic Violence and Child Advocacy Center. That's 216-391-HELP, 216-391-HELP. You can call those numbers right now and someone will be able to help you. You're talking about fear, and one of the stories that's right here in our area, and Laura Cowan is known, it went national, what had happened to you. And when you speak about being fearful, that is something that you know all too well.
Correct. Fear for my children, especially my children, because I knew he was going to kill us, Danita. So at one point in time, you didn't care what happened to you anymore. But once your children are hurt, then you turn, and I did.
Is that a big factor? And anyone from the audience, raise your hand. I'll come to you. You have a comment or anything you want to say. The fear factor, when it comes to the children, is it almost like, the victim, do what you want to do to me. But once it starts affecting my children, now it's a different story and it provokes you to do something. Anyone want to jump in and respond to that one? Right over here.
I'm Linda Reese, and I found, Danita, that I stayed because of my children. They were small or young, and I did not want our separation to allow him to have access to my children without me being there. I later discovered that that did not protect my children, but I thought that it would, so that when they were old enough to express themselves and say where they had been or what had happened to them, then that would be a good thing. A woman stays and leaves on the average 7 times before she actually decides, I've had enough. And then that safe plan is very important.
Beverly Gooden, I want to bring you in. Do you have a comment on that? Beverly? We have Beverly Gooden still via satellite. Beverly, can you jump in on that?
I mean, there are a host Yeah, I mean, there are a host of reasons why a woman would stay in a relationship that was abusive. It could be financial, it could be familial, it could be love, fear, anything. And so I think what your guest is saying is very valid. Every woman has a reason for staying if they stay, and that was the reason I started the hashtag, is to demonstrate that there are a variety of reasons, and you never really know, why someone is staying in an abusive relationship.
All right, thank you, Beverly. Now, to join the conversation again, we want to hear from you. You can email your questions to webstaff@newsnet5.com. My colleague, Michael Baldwin, he is standing by to take your email questions. You can direct your question to a particular panelist if you choose to do so, and we will read them on the air as you engage with us throughout this hour. Coming up next, we're going to talk about the reasons why victims stay with their abusers, and we're also going to talk about the philosophy of faith-based organizations when it comes to domestic violence. We'll be right back.
My name is John McCann. I'm the CEO and president of Mace Security International. Mace Security International is a multifaceted security company located in Midtown, Cleveland, Ohio at 4400 Carnegie. We are the original manufacturers of pepper spray and also our home products, which cameras, surveillance, monitoring products, really making Mace brand the #1 brand in safety and security. We make products that make you feel safer, they're easy to use, and they're very effective. You can carry Mace in your hand and feel safe 100% of the time. This product is our Mace Trainer, which we highly recommend. It's available on our website. In the product, this is the blue one is an inert unit, but basically it has all the functionality as our unit does. Sprays the same, but we fill it with water. Then additionally, there's a target inside that you can practice on outside, make sure you can hit the target, because the product only needs to go in the vicinity of a would-be assailant, and they're going to feel the effects of it. So we always tell people, just aim at the eyes, spray back and forth, and you're going to hit the target. What this does is give you peace of mind. Then this unit is a real Mace product. We also pack in a strap, which allows you then to have the product in the palm of your hand. If a would-be assailant sees it, they're going to walk away because they don't want to be sprayed with Mace. Additionally, if you're jogging or running in the park, the strap allows you to have it right in the palm of your hand and ready to go as you're running. So a would-be animal attack or even anything that frightens you, you're ready to go. So when you're sprayed with Mace, your eyes start to water, your brain starts to tell other functions to stop doing what they're doing, to shut down. And basically it gives somebody time to get away in a non-lethal strategy. So that way first responders can come in, they can identify the assailant, and then you can you can go on without having it turn into a lethal situation. The other thing that we do is we use UV dye in all of our products, which helps with the identification with the officers post the scene. Typically, Mace brand pepper spray will wear off within 24 to 48 hours, but that UV dye that we've placed on that assailant will last 7 days. And so that way, post an activity in a lineup or in a questioning situation, police officers can then further check an assailant and then determine that they got the right guy or woman. We get a lot of instances and we get a lot of thank yous from folks that use the product effectively, and it gives them empowerment to do what they want to do with their lives.
I had an ex-husband that I never got into a domestic abuse situation with. Later, with other wives, he abused them. When I met him later and asked him why that never happened with us, he said, "I knew if I ever hit you that you would kill me." And I thought, well, that was one decision he made. That was a good decision.
I'm Danita Harris, and welcome back to News Channel 5's Domestic Violence Special. In the United States, did you know there are more than 20 people per minute, men and women, who are victims of domestic violence, and it crosses all racial lines, income levels, and sexual orientation, and that is according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. I don't want you to be fooled by the look of our audience today, because domestic violence affects all races, okay? So the question that we've heard a lot about, especially over the past week, and it just really started a national firestorm: why do victims stay with their abusers? And our panelists are going to help us answer this question, and we're going to talk about the role and philosophy also of the faith-based community. But let's talk about what stirred me, because last Tuesday night I posted a picture of Janae Rice on my Facebook page just to get people's opinions on what they thought about her and her response to what happened to her husband, being basically kicked out of the NFL, possibly forever. Here are some of the Facebook comments that I got in regards to Janae, and I got to go up closer because I can't read that far back, so here we go. It says, she's a fool, a very big fool. God help her. Ann Strong said that. Here's another one. It says, if she knew better, she would want better. Money and sex can easily mess with some women's minds. Let's look at another one. She is looking for gold and willing to take abuse for it. That's sad. Pray for her. No woman should be knocked out like that and call it love. She needs mental help. Let's do another one. 2 words, gold digger. It's obvious because what woman with common sense and self-respect and morals would marry a man who spits on her, then punches her unconscious afterwards? Now, these are the types of comments that were going on all over social media. So many different opinions, so many things. Even some women saying that she deserved it. You know, she provoked him to hit her that way. And then we have Beverly Gooden with the hashtag Why I Stayed. And Beverly, you give us a little brief synopsis of what happened after you put that on Twitter.
Oh, it exploded. And I put it on there in response to comments like that, because it's easy to say when you're not in that situation what you would and wouldn't do. It's easy to take that high road, that high ground, but then you live it. And you experience it, and it changes you, and it changes the way you think, it changes the way you behave. And so I actually started in response to someone else's tweet about their experience with domestic violence, and I just kind of, you know, said my experience, and then put why I stayed on it, and then I left and came back, and it had just exploded. And I think that really speaks to how large of an issue this really is. A lot of women, smart women, you know, women with self-esteem, it doesn't matter, are experiencing this and being unfairly criticized and called stupid and fools and things of that nature, as if they don't already feel some pressure and guilt while they're in there. So I wanted to give voice to the women that were being called these names for staying in this relationship.
Well, I'm glad you said that. Kiana, how did it make you feel? You stayed in an abusive relationship. As I was reading those comments and people were calling her stupid, she's a fool and a gold digger. And you know what? Did someone say that about you?
Yes, they said I was crazy. The thing is, I was the provider. I'm a project manager. I make money. I was the motivator. Everyone depended on me. So it's not always a financial situation. The heart is weak. The heart is treacherous. So once your heart get involved and you're already manipulated and molded, you fall right in a trap.
Something that you know a lot about, Ruth, that you've heard with women who come to Numa Life Foundation, correct?
Absolutely. And it's easy to say what you would do if you're not in that situation. And what we try to help educate advocates to understand is that they need to provide resources, because there's a 60-second rule. Once that hand hits your face, what are you going to do about it? You're going to leave or you're going to stay. And if I'm going to leave, where are the resources that is going to help assist me with what I need to do should I decide to leave?
Well, we're here with Steve Sanders, a former NFL player, and you know the Ray Rice video sent shockwaves through the NFL. NFL definitely got a black eye with how they handled the situation. You still in those circles, travel in those circles. What are some of the things you heard?
You know, it's been all over the place. You know, you hear situations where people support Ray Rice. They think that he made a mistake, but they also want to see him carry on his career. But then there's also the piece of Roger Goodell and how he handled the situation and allegedly lied about having seen the video. So from that standpoint, players are really kind of split 50-50. Even some locker rooms are split 50-50 on it because of the situation and how it's been handled.
When that type of situation happens, you know, what does that do to the players, to the team, to the cohesiveness? You know, football is such a physical sport anyway. Some people saying that the sport itself, you know, contributes to some of the violence with women. What do you say to that?
Well, from that standpoint, what coping mechanisms do we have as young men? What are we taught to do? You know, we're taught to release our frustrations on the field, go get involved in a sport. When you have a young man who's very active and is maybe causing trouble in the classroom, they say, get him involved in a sport. He needs to burn off some of that energy. But sometimes that's not healthy for us, especially for the young man, which is why I do the work that I do in trying to work and educate some of the young men and provide programs to show them that there's other ways to cope with, whether it's anger, stress, which young men are dealing with on a daily basis.
This is very important that we talk about that because there is a lot of discussion about, you know, the NFL, sports, we boxing, you know, we pay to see that. But the violent mind, and Linda, if you could talk a little bit more about that mindset, young boys and men growing up with that, I gotta, you know, I'm stronger than you, I'm the man, I have to show you, you know, what is that?
We really need to change how we teach our boys of what a real man is. Because currently we say a real man is macho and can control the situation, that their wife, their girlfriend is their property, their babe, their, you know, all of that. Instead, what we need to say is, and this is the truth, a real man, a man of strength, is the one that respects women, that respects girls, that stands up to his buddies when somebody else is putting women down. And so we really need a culture shift in what we teach our boys and then how to resolve any kind of conflict non-violently.
Let's talk about that. Don't forget your email questions, webstaff@newsnet5.com. We have Mike Herron here with us today. Something very rare. You're a man, you were mentally and emotionally abused. You weren't the physical abuser, but you had a very traumatizing experience. Share that with us.
Peace and blessings. Yes, I did. One of the things was that I called the Hope Line to get help. I definitely went after trying to do the right thing. I don't believe in hitting on women. I teach my sons not to.
Continue.
So, therefore, one of the things I did was I contacted Hope. I contacted the prosecutor's office. I called the police. They laughed at me. I bought us a house. I bought a house to remodel, to move me and my sons out of the house from her. She, intel says that I slapped her in the federal building full of cameras. Our justice system wrongfully convicted me of domestic violence. 2 days before I got out of prison for that wrongful conviction, the house that I bought and remodeled for me and my sons was blown up. It's a vacant lot right now. And if it hadn't been for the Community Development Agency and Cuyahoga County Land Bank, I wouldn't have a home for them to come visit me now.
Something we hear a lot of, men don't speak up. They think they're going to be blamed anyway. And we know a lot of times that the victims, they go to the church. They go to their church because church is a place of healing. Church is a place of restoration. But there is a philosophy that some believe that the church has, is that you just pray about it and stay. And Pastor David Pratt is with us tonight, and your church is actually on the west side. What has been your experience, and what can you add to that thought pattern that is out there that churches tell me you just pray and you stay with that man no matter what because God doesn't like divorce?
Thank you, Danita. You're right. The church fails at some point in time because we have this mentality that we should just kind of brush it under the rug. After hearing all of these experts and victims, tonight, the level of this domestic violence has to be raised. One of the things that I think that I really try hard in my church to do is to be a real pastor. And I think we need to talk about real issues. We can't hide those issues any longer. This has come to the forefront, and we must make sure that we do everything to help somebody. If we can't help them, then connect them to the hope lines connected to those people.
You know what? We're going to continue that part. We're going to come back. Up next, we're going to talk about the myths around domestic violence. We're going to get back to the faith-based community. And we're also going to talk to a police official who is here who deals with it every day. We'll be right back. Welcome back to News Channel 5's Town Hall meeting on domestic violence. If you need help, you're watching this right now, we've hit some issues that you know are resonating in your life. You can call the National Domestic Violence Hotline. That's 1-800-799-SAFE. That's the National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-SAFE, or the Domestic Violence and Child Advocacy Center, 216-391-HELP. We want you to get the help that you need so that you can be safe and your family can be safe. Let's pick up where we left off with the faith-based community. As you said, Pastor Pratt, that the church needs to start to deal with real issues and be real pastors and educate themselves on how to direct their parishioners. And I'm also here with Pastor Denise Cunningham Doggett, and you are very familiar with domestic violence and the women that you deal with. Where is this gap? Define this gap between the church and the community organizations that are in place to help the women that may come to you for prayer dealing with this issue.
Thanks, Danita, for asking. I think the piece that is the gap is sometimes the education of what churches offer. He was very clear when he said the piece about what the churches offer. Many times that we will preach about it or pray about it, but people leave wounded coming to church, feeling like they don't have an opportunity. Or, if I could just really be honest, sometimes there are male pastors or people that represent someone that has been abusive to them. Doesn't mean that they don't want to get the help or they can't, but by time they really have come to the place to really seek help or talk to someone, they have almost been at a place where they're victimized again. I say that it is one that is an opportunity. It is an opportunity for prayer, but it also is an opportunity for us to be the church and to be available and to listen to the hearts of people, not just women, but men as well. I think when you said the other pieces about where the community is, the resources is the key piece. A lot of times I have to say, I'm not Superwoman. I don't have the answers, but I want to guide that person. I feel the responsibility when they come to me or if they sought me out to be able to even come to this point. I've got so many resources just hearing today of how can I make a difference. And sometimes making a difference is listening, redirecting. If it's not your area or it's not your area that you can handle, get it to the person who can really help them and then be a support to them as they continue to learn, want to be able to get help and assistance in their journey.
Very well said. We're talking about education, and we know that you, Dr. Smith, you have developed some software that people can obtain to do just that. Tell us about it.
Yes, well, the software is actually geared towards the higher education community, and it is in response to the new Violence Against Women Act reauthorization that requires campuses to actually have more opportunities to be able to provide victims with the opportunity to respond and report to any incidences of dating violence or sexual assault.
And Ruth Johnson, Pneuma Life, you go right into the churches to educate the churches on how to do this. Has it been a challenge for you?
Yes, it has been, but it is very important that churches be educated on the issues of sexual and domestic violence, and it's important that they have advocates in their church, which is what we seek to do, because just when you have that knowledge is good, but then the issue still remains throughout the year. When you have an advocate, the advocate is to provide resources throughout the year. Make sure that community organizations such as Domestic Violence Center, Rape Crisis, and many other are visibly available, because that victim knows when to reach for and use those resources. A lot of times the church does not know how to respond. Resources is the first key, like one of the most important keys of helping a victim of domestic violence.
Pastor Pratt.
Absolutely.
I just want to agree with you and tell you that, you know, one of the things that we have to do as pastors in faith-based communities, we have to be able and not afraid to engage with agencies such as yours. You're right. We don't have all the answers. I believe that prayer does change things. I fully support that. But also know that there are people that will not come to you or to me as pastors, but they'll go to somebody else because they don't want anybody else to know about it. And so we've got to be able to bring that level of awareness up to your agencies that can do that and those kind of victims. And Danita, you know, tonight what you do is you join us together to bridge that gap, so that we can help people, men and women alike.
Men and women, and that is the message. We have a myth about domestic violence that I want to deal with right now. You've heard some of these myths about domestic violence, myths like some people deserve to be hit, or alcohol and drug abuse causes domestic violence, or domestic violence happens only to poor women, or they are staying because of the money. And the one we heard most, this is unbelievable, if it were that bad, he or she would just leave. So we want to dispel this one myth, and this came as a result of the story with Cuyahoga County Judge Mason that was thrown into the spotlight. And it was a huge outcry because no one could believe that someone of his stature, profession, even the neighborhood where he lives, that he couldn't possibly be an abuser. And Linda, you're very passionate about debunking this myth about what's the #1 call that comes into police stations, and where are these areas in Northeast Ohio?
So the #1 call that comes into every large city, every metropolitan area, is domestic violence. What people don't realize, the #1 call for most suburbs is domestic violence. We work in all of the suburbs in Cuyahoga County, and we are very, very busy. Our court systems, our support groups, all of our services in the suburb. And we actually ran a batterers intervention program for 16 years, and our clients were physicians, attorneys, law enforcement, judges, I mean, you name it, every profession, people with money, people without money, people of different religions, races. So domestic violence is everywhere.
We want to make that very clear. It could be your neighbor.
Yes.
Okay, before we say that. We have Detective Cynthia Olivers here, and she's with the Cleveland Police Department. She works in the domestic violence unit, and I invited you here today because you see the victims when you come in. You deal with the abusers. And what are some of the things that you encounter or you even hear that has to be challenging for you? Because I can imagine if you see a woman come in with a broken arm or a busted eye and they say to you, but you know what, I don't want to press charges.
Yes, thank you, Danita. We see so many reasons why victims come in and recant what they say as it relates to their intimate partner. We have to remember that they have a physical, emotional, and intimate relationship with them. So sometimes they come in and say, you know, I didn't call the police, or this didn't happen, I tripped, I fell. Someone actually came in the house and assaulted me. It's very difficult for them because, like I said, there's an attachment to that individual, and they don't want to see them go to jail. They don't want to see them away from their children, and they oftentimes still love the batterer, and they want to try to help him. So what we try to do in our domestic violence unit is to investigate the crimes where we can prosecute with evidence-based prosecution, because we know a lot of times, 90% or 95% of the time, the victim will later change her mind and reluctantly will not cooperate with the prosecution. On the other hand, when I talk to the batterer or the male, you know, I still try to treat them with the utmost respect and talk to them. And sometimes they downplay and twist it around where it's the victim's fault. You know, they'll say, well, if she hadn't have done this, or I didn't mean to do that, I just lost control, and I need some help. Various reasons why they commit these types of abuse.
Very challenging job to have. Before we go to break, I want to throw up these phone numbers one more time. The National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-SAFE, 1-800-799-SAFE. Domestic Violence and Child Advocacy Center, their helpline is 216-391-HELP. You don't have to stay in that situation. Call and talk to someone right now. This town hall was designed for you. You listening, you watching right now. Don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back. Welcome back to News Channel 5's Town Hall meeting on domestic violence. We have invited you, our viewers, to join the conversation. You have been emailing us so far, so I'm going to check in with my colleague, Michael Baldwin, to hear what you have to say. Michael?
Hey, Danita, this question is from Annie, and she emailed us, and she writes, my daughter is in a very abusive relationship, but she keeps going back. I fear for her and her kids. What should I do?
Beverly Gooden, I'm going to direct that to you. What advice would you give to her? A woman who is afraid for her daughter.
I think the first question is she needs to ask her, how can she help her? I think a lot of times that we get so concerned about our loved one, and rightfully so, that we're afraid, and then we act without asking what we can do to help. And so I think the first step is always to ask her daughter, what do you need? How can I help you? How can I help you escape? Just let her be in control of the escape.
All right, thank you very much, Beverly. Michael, you have another email question for us.
This was sent to our Twitter page, Danita, and it says, does it harm kids to watch mom get beaten?
Does it harm kids to watch their mother be beaten? Anyone from the panel can jump in on that one. Does it harm the children to see their mother be beaten? I would assume yes.
Absolutely.
Anyone want to jump in?
Yeah, absolutely. Most children, when they get older, will say they wish that they had left, the family had left that situation earlier. But we see this all the time. Children who come to our shelter, they are having nightmares. Many of them, research says more than 50% have post-traumatic stress disorder. They regress. They have academic problems. They can't sleep. Physical ailments, all of that, because what they're seeing is traumatizing to them. And that's something that really affects children at the core.
All right, Michael, we have someone here. You want to add a question before we go to the email? Let me get the email, and then we're going to come straight to you. Michael, you understand you have another email for us.
Yes, I do. This one is from Victor, and he writes, why is there rarely any discussion of domestic violence by women on men, especially in a marriage?
I'm glad he brought that up, because that's why we have Mike here, and we also have Joey Ruffin. Why do you think there is so much silence about it, Joey?
I believe that it's because men are taught not to reveal weakness, and that's a sign of weakness to feel that you show people that you were dominated by a woman, and I think that's the #1 reason why men won't come out.
And Mike Karen, you actually go into the prisons and you talk to men who have been abused by women. What do they say to you?
Well, most importantly, they say that we don't want to seem soft, or we don't want people to think that you're using the word chumps. But the thing about it is that our greatest strength is letting the truth. The Word of God tells us the truth will set us free. So I try to talk to the men about not looking at the past and allowing the past of how you grew up to dictate your destiny, but just make sure that you stay focused on, let the truth get out. If you got to go and suffer a little bit for the truth getting out, so be it. I had to.
Right. Get your healing from having the truth be
That's
out
right.
there. And you know what? I think we need to use this and have this filled with men. Men who were abused, because it isn't talked about as much, but we know it is out there. Michael, do you have another one for us?
I do, Danita. This one comes from Rhonda Andrews, and she says this is directed towards Ruth Johnson. She says, how is Pneuma Life helping people being abused in the church?
How is Pneuma Life helping people being abused in the church, Ruth?
We're helping people that are abused in the church by ensuring that pastors know how to respond to abuse, by making sure that they're educated on issues of abuse and how to respond appropriately, being sure that that advocate is in place and that advocate provides resources that come from various agencies and organizations, because the church often does not have those resources.
All right. We want to talk about our young people right now. And I have to say, after the Ray Rice video, I was so proud that we here at News Channel 5, we ran a couple of stories on what was happening in local football programs, that there are coaches who started talking to their players about domestic violence and educating them on the issue. And one of those coaches is here with us today from Eastlake High North, I believe. And this is Coach Mike Bilt. Tell me, you didn't have to do that, but you chose to do it. Tell me why.
Well, I think it's very important that the young men understand that #1, it's about adding value to the lives of people around them, and the way we treat one another is very, very important. It was mentioned earlier, young men are taught a bad lesson early, that being a man is about having the nice car, having the pretty wife, making all the money, and that's not what it is. It's about how we treat one another. And if there's one thing that my players leave me with, I hope it's that.
All right, and I want one of your players, come over and join me in the spotlight. I'm not going over there in the dark. One of the players, come over there and join me that Coach Bill is talking about, because he is really instilling some wisdom in these young men that will change the way they think. And tell me, what did you think about the coach when he gathered you all together to talk about this? This wasn't about defense and offense. This was serious stuff.
Yeah, it was a surprising matter, but it's really important because it's affecting people all around us. And, personally, I think there's other ways that you can handle your current situation, like your anger or your emotions. You can, maybe talk it out, or you don't have to resort to physical harm or emotional harm or verbal harm. So
What type of impact has this had, not just on your players, but are you guys spreading this message to, other young men in your school?
Oh yeah, of course. Unfortunately, it does go on even in our age. Around the school, I've seen it, and I haven't stepped in. I wish I have, but there are people being affected by domestic violence even at our young age. And
Yeah, we do know teen dating violence. And your name?
Ryan Rowland.
Ryan, great job, Ryan. We appreciate you being here today. Let's applaud Ryan, a young man who is standing up right now so that he doesn't make those poor choices. But teen dating violence, thank you very much. Teen dating violence is a big issue, and Operation Keepsake is an organization that digs right into the heart of that. And Deborah Landis, you're here with us today. You actually go into the schools, into classrooms to educate our young people, girls and boys, about teen dating violence.
We do, Danita, and thank you very much. One thing that we've learned is that when a teen or a young person is experiencing dating abuse or any type of unhealthy relationship, generally speaking, one of the first persons they confide in is a friend. And so we developed the Friends for Friends campaign at Operation Keepsake. And we have 7 schools that have participated this year. And these students, the peer leadership group is what we call them, they wrote stories and created films under our direction. We even added music to it to bring this issue into the light, to bring awareness into the schools, not only their schools, but their communities. And we are having next Tuesday night at Warrensville Heights High School at 6:30 an Oscar night to honor them and honor their films. And we'd like to invite everyone to come. It's a free event, and honor the students and show their work, showcase their work of how to help a friend.
And we have to celebrate that in our young people when they are doing the right thing. Cindy Martin is next to you with her beautiful crown. This is Mrs. Akron 2013. Teen dating violence was actually your platform when you ran.
Yes, teen dating violence and sexual abuse was actually my platform when I ran. I actually experienced myself sexual violence and domestic violence as a teen. So I feel like it's very important to get the word out to young teens. And like the young man Ryan said, it's happening a lot in schools. And if somebody doesn't step up, it's going to continue to happen. So that's my platform, and I travel around and I speak to teens about what's going on and to tell a friend, because that's what I did. Thank you.
And it is about telling a friend. I have a friend here, Stephanie Phelps. I want you to come down because social media was such a big deal when the Ray Rice video hit. That's where a lot of the comments came out. That's where you really heard a lot of the views, some very disturbing. And I saw a lot of people become advocates on social media for domestic violence. And I can say that this is one woman who is an advocate for all things that affect women. And Stephanie, you did like a campaign to hear back from people on this issue. And what did you hear?
You know, Danita, I did hear a lot of the questions that have already been addressed, and I think that Beverly already spoke to some of those questions. But the main thing is, if you have a friend and they are a victim of domestic violence, what do you do when they want to get out? You rescue them, and then they go back.
They go back. Isn't that very frustrating? That's a great question to end on. We're going to end it right there on this block, but don't you go anywhere. We have more coming back. This is News Channel 5's Domestic Town Hall meeting. Stay with us. I want to go back out to Beverly Gooden. As we close the show, Beverly, give us succinctly something that we can do in this cause for domestic violence to stop it.
The first thing that I think we can do is listen to survivors, listen to victims, get their perspective on what's going on, listen to them when they say, you know, how they want to get out, when they want to get out, if they want to get out, and respect that. I think respecting the voice of the person who is living it is very important, because a lot of times our voices are shut out by the person that is abusing us. And so if we have someone, a friend, a family member to listen to us, then that is just like gold. The second thing that someone who is living in domestic violence now can do is begin to create an escape plan. An escape plan was very vital for my escape. I had an escape bag with clothes and toiletries and medicine in it, so that if something happened and I need to grab it, I'd just run out. And so I think it's really important to figure out how you want to plan your escape and activate that.
Beverly, we thank you for joining us today, and that is great advice. Linda Johannick.
Friends and family get very frustrated with the victim, and so we always say keep the lines of communication open, let them know how much you care about them, and let them know how concerned you are for their safety.
Dr. Smith.
I would say don't criticize or shame a person for going back to a situation.
Very good. Ruth?
I would say empowerment is what is needed. The power of choice has been taken away from her, and we need to be able to provide proper resources that they can use, so educate ourselves on resources that are available.
Linda Johannick, the first thing you do when developing a safety plan, what do you do?
Basically, we ask them where the offender is. We have them, if they're in the home, you know, you need to, similar to what Beverly said, you need to put things like your documents, some money, keys, things like that separately. But it's really to make sure you're aware of your surroundings. So if there is an explosive incident, how do you get out at that time? So there's a range of things. Same with change your route going to and from work or school if you're not with the person. Just it really is about changing a lot of what you do and being aware of your surroundings.
I thank all of you. I thank our panelists. I thank our survivors who are here today. I thank all of you who came here today to join us. We've been talking about domestic violence over this past hour. We wanted to engage the community in this discussion, but we also wanted to educate you about this issue. We hope you received that information. We have a list of resources for you on newsnet5.com, places where you can go for help. Really, we want you to know that there is hope for you. There is hope for you. And there are people who want to listen and who choose to help you get out of that situation. I'm Danita Harris. This has been News Channel 5's Town Hall meeting on domestic violence. We thank you for joining us, and please be safe.